Then I won't have. So I want to say a word about anybody. Oh, there's Roberta. Anybody who is a regular shul goer.
Mhm.
If you're a regular shul goer, you have your shul, and in your shul you have your seat. You know, it's called a makom kavu'ah, a fixed and appointed place. This is where I am meant to be. And heaven helps somebody who comes in not knowing anything and sits in your makom kavu'ah. You know, it's a special place and you want to be there, but we're all warm and welcoming, so we go somewhere else. But we're discombobulated. And if we are in somebody else's shul, if we go into another shul, we stand there and we say, okay, where is my makom kavu'ah? So it's always a challenge. For me, I live really near Westchester County. And so my local synagogue is a conservative synagogue, but I used to be the administrator, you know, like the office schlep for an Orthodox synagogue, a young Israel synagogue in northern Riverdale. And they recently reopened their building after an extensive 4-year transformation of their building, which is tiny. And so, and I hadn't seen the interior, and I thought, okay, well, Shabbat, let's go to this synagogue. And so, first of all, because it's an Orthodox synagogue, not only am I sitting on the women's side, which is very nice, it's very pleasant, it's just like everything else. But I didn't know, do I bring my talit? Do I not bring my talit? Do I wear a kippah? Do I not wear a kippah? And when I got there, there was a woman wearing a talit, and there were a lot of hat people, nobody wearing a kippah. But at any rate, what I wanted
wearing
to,
a talit?
I didn't see Tova. She wasn't there. I would have seen her. Oh, wait. Oh, we saw each other at the Kiddush, and I don't think she was wearing a talit at services. I didn't notice her.
I think she does there.
Right.
I think she did at HIR.
Of course. So at any rate, what was for me the payoff of being there, besides the fact that the interior of the building is just beautiful, was that a wonderful teacher named Eliza Sperling spoke after the service. She was the Devar Torah. She was the person who spoke for the day. And she's a brilliant teacher. And she was speaking about not the Torah portion, but the Haftarah. And not only that, but she was speaking not just about the Haftarah for this week, which we are going to read, but about the scope of the 10 Haftarot that we are paying attention to. And so I just thought, I am a lucky, lucky, lucky person. And afterwards, I went up and I explained that I was teaching on these Haftarot, and I wondered if she had an extra copy, and she handed me her Devar Torah, which apparently I have lost. But no, I hope I'll find it. I think I'll find it. I've got to find it. But the scope of the Haftarah of what she said was, imagine yourself in a situation where you feel wronged, where you feel that you were abused in some way, you were done wrong to, you have suffered. And sometimes the most important thing is for you to tell the person how they have made you suffer, to make them understand what they have done to you. And only after you feel completely and absolutely heard can you begin to make amends. And now imagine that you are on the other side of this, and somebody tells you how you have done wrong and how you have been abusive and how you have been horrible. And after they have been heard, you then say, okay, Okay. But look, here is how I have suffered. And in a way, the three Haftarot of rebuke are God telling the people Israel, here are the really, truly horrible things you have done. Horrible things. And I need you to hear this, because there can be no rapprochement, there can be nothing until you understand the depths to which you have sunk and the evil that you have done, because you have done evil. And then the people turn around, and beginning with this Haftarah, the third, the one that we did this past week,
Nachamu.
Nachamu, the people say, but we too have suffered. We have suffered at your hand. You know, we understand we did wrong. We're not arguing that point. But we want you to know that we have suffered. And then it begins to come back. So this past Shabbat, we heard the Haftarah in the book of Isaiah called Nachamu. In fact, it gave its name to the entire Shabbat. This is Shabbat Nachamu. And the word Nachamu means comfort, and it's repeated. Comfort, oh comfort. So we're going to read it, but I'd like to do something a little wacko. We have more people coming in, which is good. I'd like to, if we can, read the first the first three verses, and then go back and hear this really beautiful choral piece that was made popular by the choral group, the college choral group Pizmon. And I have queued up like 5 different versions of it. I can't figure out which one I want to play. But first, let's look at, I should put musicians on. Okay. But first, let's look at the text, okay? So here we are. Here's the text of Isaiah. Now, we are in the second chunk of Isaiah, the one that is frequently called Deutero-Isaiah. There's exquisite poetry, and we're going to see that. This is now Isaiah when the Assyrians do not exactly march into the land, when there isn't an Assyrian invasion. There is this turnaround saying, you know, boy, did we luck out, because God is not going to inflict that pain on the people. So let us just read this very beginning of this. Who would like to read? Okay, Ruth. Unmute.
Yep.
Okay,
In English?
please.
Okay. Comfort, oh, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and declare to her that her term of service is over, that her iniquity is expiated, for she has received at the hand of God's hand double for her sins.
Okay, one more.
A voice rings out, clear in the desert, a road for God, level in the wilderness, a highway for our God.
Okay, so now if we go back to 1, the words comfort, oh, comfort my people, says your God. This is Isaiah speaking, right? This is Isaiah relating a message. And if you think about it, then the second verse is God speaking to Isaiah. Right? God is speaking to Isaiah saying, now turn around and speak tenderly to Jerusalem. All right. So let us take a moment and listen to this really beautiful thing. Let's see if I can get it exactly right. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, there are all these different versions of Nachamu. The one that is just the album cover is the best music, the best listening opportunity. So that's the one I'm going to play. Okay, here we go. Oh, let's get rid of
Instacart
Instacart.
shoppers know your order is more than just items.
Oh, sorry, you've got to hear it from the beginning. Oh, if I don't go back and close it down, then it, whoa, hang on.
Many people have asked that question.
Okay, so first of all, isn't it beautiful? Isn't that amazing? Whoops, I opened the wrong little piece here. Okay, so isn't that so much fun? Welcome everybody who's joined us. So it rearranges those first few verses of our Haftarah, but it's so well known, that melody, that arrangement is so well known that you can see lots of different groups doing it, and it's just beautiful. So I really wanted to start with that. Somebody's put something in the chat, and of course I'm not. Don't forget to pin myself. This is Marcia yelling at me because I don't pin myself. Okay, hang on. You see, the problem, Marcia, is I don't usually have me on the screen because I don't like looking at me. But okay. And Aliyah has also shared a recording of what? Oh, also has a recording of Nachamu. Very nice. Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to our text, all right?
What is Nachamu mean?
Nachamu means comfort. So it gets repeated, comfort, oh comfort, Nachamu, Nachamu ami. So here's how the arrangement starts. The arrangement starts, Dabru al lev Yerushalayim, speak to the heart of Jerusalem. Vikiru eleha ki mal'at tzva'a, because all of her service is filled up, is done. Ki nertza avona ki lakcha miyad Adonai, she has received from the hand of Adonai kiflayim bechol chatoteha, she has received punishment at the hand of God. All right? And then we have this beautiful kol koreh bamidbar, a voice calls out in the wilderness, clear a road. I want us to be aware of this sentence because when we go to the second Haftarah, the one that's coming up this week, we're going to see a lot of the same language. All right? So this is language of comfort, language of return, language of having the road be made level for us. The road be made. Let's just keep going. I want to keep going with this. Somebody else want to read? Ruth read. Somebody else read.
I'll read.
Okay.
Let
Naomi.
every valley be raised, every hill and mount made low. Let the rugged ground become level, and the ridges become a plain. The presence of God shall appear, and all flesh as one shall behold, for God has spoken.
All right. Here's this lovely. The synagogue that I serve as a teacher and as the director of education has a bulletin, and the bulletin is called Mevaser, which means the announcer, the announcement. Somebody else want to read?
I will.
Okay.
A voice rings out, proclaim. Another asks, what shall I proclaim? All flesh is grass, all its goodness like flowers of the field. Grass withers, flowers fade. When the breath of God's breath blows on them, indeed people are but grass.
Take one more.
Grass withers, flowers fade, but the word of our God is always fulfilled.
Okay, so now let's go back and just look at those two sentences or three sentences, because now we have this beautiful picture of how things fade away, how quickly life goes away, right? Like
Right.
grass. It just leaves. Flowers of the field, it's a phrase that we know that was like lilies of the field. It was taken from here, right? Everybody knows there's a movie called Lilies of the Field, and there are songs about it, taken from Isaiah. All the poetry of Isaiah is just stunning. And this is this picture of our lives being like something that just grows up and then it goes, and it comes and it goes. And this voice, which isn't defined, Isaiah doesn't tell us what this voice is. Where does it come from? A voice rings out and says, proclaim. And another, which we could take as the prophet, right? The prophet says, okay, what do you want me to proclaim? And the first voice says, the voice of God, perhaps, all flesh is grass. Everything is going to fade away. And this image of things coming up and flourishing and then fading. And because Isaiah is not just any old prophet, because he's a poet, we have this repetition, Yavesh chatzir navel tzitz. And then he uses it again in the next sentence, Yavesh chatzir navel tzitz. And now we have this promise that God is going to return. And here we have this, again, a picture of the geography of Israel, this concept of working within the actual landscape. And when we go to the next Haftarah, we're going to see this pure sense of Zionism, of love for the land, for the physicality of the land. Somebody else, let's have someone else read.
I can read.
Go.
Ascend a lofty mountain, O herald of joy to Zion. Raise your voice with power, O herald of joy to Jerusalem. Raise it, have no fear, announce to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, my sovereign God comes in might, whose arm wins triumph. See, God has brought along the reward, the recompense is in view.
So here we are. This is the promise that is made in the first verse of the chapter. In the first verse of the chapter, Isaiah is told that God says, Nachamu, Nachamu, comfort the people. And here comes the comfort. God is going to make good on this promise of you've suffered enough. Remember the concept that the three Haftarot of rebuke are God saying, here is the evil and the wrong that you have done. This is why you are suffering. And now we have this sense that we can come back and God is going to take us back. Not just going to take us back, but like a shepherd. Somebody else. Woohoo.
Like a shepherd who pastures the flock, God gathers up the lambs and carries them in the divine bosom while gently driving the mother sheep. Who measured the waters with a hand's hollow and gouged the skies with a span and meted earth's dust with a measure. I'm on an iPhone.
Oh, that's, well, good for you. You did a good job. Okay, I want to stop for a second. Okay, so let's think about the kinds of imagery that Isaiah is using. He uses agricultural imagery, but not of fields that have been plowed and planted, but just like what comes up. He's using the earth, he's using geography, make the high thing low, right? So that it's not, I'm a walker and I walk in Riverdale where there's a lot of mountains. Even out the plains, may everything even for us to return to what? Return to where? Any thoughts?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. To return to Jerusalem, what else?
To God's good people, I think.
To God's goodness, right? To the goodness that that God gives us the chance to turn around, to turn our lives around, right? This is Teshuvah. You get to return.
Yeah.
Right.
Follow the laws that God has given.
Follow the laws that have been given. It's not like we didn't know them. We already
Yeah,
had
right,
them.
but people turned astray.
Right, exactly right. Okay, so I want to go, we have to like move it because I want to try to get two Haftarot in, and the next one's a dandy. Okay, let's keep going. So, and now we're talking about God as being a shepherd, right? A very classical reference to God as shepherd, and a reference to God as being the one who knows even the quantity of water on the face of the planet, right? And who knows exactly how wide the skies are. This idea that, I very rarely follow recipes. I'm just not good at that. But imagine that there's a recipe you know so well that you don't have to measure it out because you've measured it out 100 times and you know exactly what goes into it. This is God knowing exactly what, not just the people, but all the substances that make up the earth. And weighed the mountains with a scale and the hills with a balance. Somebody who hasn't read who wants to read. If you don't want to, don't. I'll read. Mitikenet ruach Adonai, who has plumbed the mind or the spirit of God, the ish atzato yodienu, and who, what person, what human can disclose God's plan? So did God consult anyone? Et mi no atz? Who did God consult? No one. And who bestowed understanding, providing guidance in the way of right? Who guided God in knowledge and made known the path of wisdom, right? This is Isaiah saying clearly nobody can know the mind of God. God was the entire mind behind the creation of the universe. And this next sentence is one that ever since I very, very first started studying, I remembered this. Hoi goyim kemar midli. The nations are like an icky a bitter drop in the bucket. Uchashachak moznayim nechshavu, and reckoned as dust on a balance scale. Hen iyim kadakito, like the islands or the coastlands are lifted like motes of dust. All right, this is more metaphorical, talking about how vast is God and how small are the rest of us. And when I first read this, I thought that by this, the nations are a drop in the bucket. You know, I really thought that it meant Israel as well. But now the Haftarah is going to go on to say, here are the nations I mean. Here's who's not on the scale here. Ulvanon ein de ba'er v'chayato ein de olah. Lebanon is not fuel enough, nor its beasts enough for sacrifice. In other words, even if we took all of the cedars of Lebanon, hacked them down and burned them, it's not enough. And even if they sacrificed every animal they had, it does not suffice. Because kol hagoyim ka'ayin negdo me'efes vatohu nechshavu lo. All the nations are like ayin, like nothing, negdo. Ke'efes v'tohu, like nothingness and tohu. I know that we're familiar with the phrase tohu vavohu, which is chaos and void. This is like nothing, nothing, nothing. Different ways of saying nothing. Nothing. And yet, we're going to see a little further down that God accounts the people Israel. Somebody's got to read. Somebody read 18. Ruth, you started. Why don't you take us out? Keep reading for us.
Okay. To whom then can you liken God? With what form can you make comparison? The idol? A woodworker shaped it, and a smith overlaid it with gold, forging links of silver. It's beautiful poetry.
It's amazing poetry, isn't it?
As a gift, someone chooses the mulberry, a wood that does not rot, then seeks a skillful woodworker to make a firm idol that will not topple.
So even if you use the most beautiful and enduring material to make an idol, the idol is still an idol.
Do you not know? Have you not heard? Have you not been told from the very first? Have you not discerned how the earth was founded? Wow.
It's like I've got nothing to say. We should just keep going. Somebody else want to read? Naomi?
Sure. It is God who is enthroned above the vault of the earth, so that its inhabitants seem as grasshoppers, who spread out the skies like gauze, stretched them out like a tent to dwell in.
Oh my gosh.
Bringing potentates to naught, making rulers of the earth as nothing. Hardly are they planted, hardly are they sown, hardly has their stem taken root in earth, when God blows upon them and they dry up, and the storm bears them off like straw.
Okay, I want to stop for a second. So think back to the beginning of the chapter where we had this reference to grass withering and flowers fading in the field. And we come back to that same illusion, but even bigger. Like the prophet has taken the imagery and expanded it. So all through the Haftarah, we see images like images of measuring things out. And then we say, God has measured the dust of the earth on a pan. And earlier we have this notion of the nations being like nothing, and now we have, and their idols are nothing. And even if you were to create the most beautiful statue you could possibly imagine, it is not going to be, it's not going to be sufficient. It's not going to be God, because God has the measure of the universe and of the people and all the different nations, right? God has the measure of the nations. And now, after 3 weeks of hearing about all the horrible things that we have done and all the horrible things that are going to happen to us, and reading Eicha, where we say, how is this possible? How is it possible for us to have suffered like this? And then God says, okay, so now you understand. Now you understand what you've done. And now you can come back. And this Haftarah goes on a little further. I want to go back to it. Yes. We have 2 more. Somebody else, Sylvia, you want to read?
To whom then can you liken me? To whom can I be compared? Says the Holy One. Lift high your eyes and see. Who created these? The one who sends out their host by count, who calls them each by name. Given such great might and vast power, not a single one fails to appear.
That's the end of our Haftarah. Okay? I'm pretty sure that's the end. Let me make sure. Yeah, 26. Okay, so that's the end of our Haftarah. So what do we have to say about this Haftarah? How do we feel at the end of it? How have we been left? How do we feel?
We've been shown.
Do we feel comforted? First of all, that's a question. Do we feel like we have been or are being comforted?
Well, I think we've been promised that God will take care of us.
Okay. Sylvia?
I personally don't actually feel very comforted. I feel like, oh yes, okay, so I'm like the dust and I'm about to go somewhere in dust, or I'm grass and I'm going to wither. And, you know, of course it's all true, but I don't feel comforted that God's going to bring me back to being part of a chosen people and being loved. And
We're not there yet, right?
We're not there yet. I'm not there.
We're not there yet. Right. So that's the thing. It is a glorious Haftarah, and it starts out by saying that God says to Isaiah, comfort, go comfort the people, comfort, comfort. So Isaiah delivers the message. But then there's this vastness. The Haftarah feels huge. It has scale that's really kind of enormous. And there's the feeling that we're tiny,
Yes.
Yes, right? It doesn't mean that there isn't comfort coming, but it's not yet. It's not yet. All right? So I think, oh my gosh, we're going to go on to the next Haftarah. Everybody needs to give me a second. Okay. There, now I can see you up at the top of the screen. This is better. Okay, so here's where we finished. Given such great might and vast power, not a single one of what? Not a single one of the hosts of heaven, not a single one of, right? You know, it's left ambiguous. It's left ambiguous. So now let's look at our next one. Our next Haftarah starts towards the end of chapter, or in the middle of chapter 49, but I wanted to back up a little bit. It starts at verse, I think 14. Yeah, it starts at 14. This is the Haftarah for Parshat Ekev, but I wanted to back up a little bit so we can get a run in, and I will read just so we can get through some of this faster. Ko Amar Adonai, thus says God. All right, this is always the prophet delivering a new thought, a new prophecy. When you see that, it's a kind of a liturgical, a signpost in language that there's a new thought coming. In an hour of favor, ba'ed ratzon aniticha, I answer you. Uviyom Yeshua azarticha, and on a day of salvation I help you. I created you and appointed you a covenant people, restoring the land, allotting anew the desolate holdings, saying to the prisoners, go free. To those who are in darkness, show yourselves. They shall pasture along the roads, on every bare height shall be their pasture. Right? La asurim tseu. You know, in our daily prayers we say matir asurim, that God releases the bound, right? And so this is kind of a lot of the language of our Siddur. Certainly the language of our Piyutim comes from Isaiah. So much of it is so gorgeous. So we're going to keep seeing little bits and pieces that other paitanim, that other writers of liturgical poetry have taken for their own. Okay? Lo yiravu velo yitzma'u. They shall not hunger or thirst. Hot wind and sun shall not strike them, for one who loves them will lead them and will guide them to springs of water. Here we're beginning to feel like maybe we've got a shot. I will make all my mountains a road. You don't have to go up and down. And my highways shall be built up. It's going to be smooth sailing. All right? Look, these are coming from afar. Who are the these?
People coming back from exile.
The repentance, those coming back from exile. Although, you know, by chapter 49, we're in 2nd Isaiah. First Isaiah did not see exile, but 2nd Isaiah saw, and so this is maybe the return of prophets, of refugees, the return of those who are coming to make sacrifices in the temple. People who had, remember, by this time we've got two different kingdoms. Maybe the northern kingdom doesn't go anymore to Jerusalem, which is just on the border, just below the border of the southern kingdom of Judah. Hine ele marachok yavo'u, from these are coming from afar, some from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. All right. We're almost there. Ranu shamayim. Ronu shamayim, shout, O heavens, and rejoice, O earth. Where do we hear this, or something very much like this? There's another Haftarah that starts Roni Akara. Rejoice, O you barren one. Break into shouting, O you hills, for God has comforted. Ki nicham Adonai amo, right? About 20-something chapters ago. Va'aniyav yirachim. And he has taken back his afflicted ones, aniyav. Yirachim also, if you think Rachmanis means comfort or mercy, he's taken us back. Here's where our Haftarah starts. Anybody want to read? Vivian?
Sure. Zion says, God has forsaken me. My sovereign has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her baby or disown the child of her womb? Though she might forget, I never forget you.
So this is God saying, Zion says, nope, we are in the doghouse, right? We know this. How do we know this? We've just had Tisha B'Av. We know that destruction and misery and horrible, horrible consequences. And God clearly has forsaken us because we've gone through this. But no, the prophet says, no, even though you've suffered, even though you have been miserable, you are like the child of the womb. You're never going to be forgotten. Look at this. Is this not gorgeous? Go ahead, Vivian.
See, I have engraved you on the palm of my hands. Your walls are ever before me.
And we have this word chomotayach, your walls. Chomotayach negdi tamid. In our synagogues, we have another word that we say is negdi tamid. Who remembers? Shviti Hashem negdi tamid. We place God in front of us forever. So we place God in front of us, right? Right facing us, and God places us. We place God, and God places our walls that we built to hold up what? To hold up the Temple Mount, to hold up the place of sacrifices and the place of worship. We place God before us, Tamid, and God places us and our walls before us. Go ahead, Vivian, you're having a good time.
Swiftly your children are coming. Those who ravaged and ruined you shall leave you.
And ruined you, I think those who ravaged and ruined you shall
leave
leave. Yeah. And the reason is because we're talking about the walls and what happens to the walls. The walls of the temple get tossed right off the sides of the mountain. I mean, if you go to Jerusalem, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. If you go to Jerusalem and you go to the southern part of the Western Wall, I think I got that right. You are like near Robinson's Arch. If you go to that part of the wall, there are all these massive boulders, all these parts of what used to be the temple tossed off the Temple Mount down into the streets of what are Jerusalem. Huge, huge blocks of cut stone. Right? So here is God saying, all of the temple, things are destroyed. Jerusalem is being ravaged, but your children are coming back to rebuild you. Your children are coming back. Now, remember, this is not at the time of the Babylonian destruction of the temple. So this is really kind of prophecy and vision. Although nobody is really clear about the dating of 2nd Isaiah, which encompasses chapters 40 through, I want to say 59, I'm not sure. 40 through a chunk of 50, all right? Those chapters are 2nd Isaiah, and the timing of that is a little fuzzy. But imagine that Isaiah is living at the time of the rise of the Assyrian Empire, but the Assyrians do not invade, for whatever reason, do not invade Judah. They do enter into the northern kingdom, into Israel, but they don't invade Judah. So Jerusalem is still standing at this point. But by the time of 2nd Isaiah, things are looking sort of dicey. And remember, it's going to be from the time of Isaiah to the time of Jeremiah is about 100 years. But yeah, 80 years, all right? So empires rise, empires fall. Isaiah can see it happening. Certainly 2nd Isaiah, and by the time we get there, 3rd Isaiah absolutely can see the writing on the walls of Jerusalem, okay? Let's see if we can get through, we have 12 minutes. I think we're golden. Let's see if we can get through this other Haftarah and then go back and talk about this ark that Eliza Sperling talks about. I love this idea that God inscribes us on the palms of his hand. Okay, and swiftly your children are coming, those who ravaged and ruined you, right? Those invaders, those marauders, those other people, those other nations will leave. Okay, anybody else has not had a chance and wants to read? Look up, go ahead, whoever's reading, read.
Look up all around you and see. They are all assembled or come to you. As I live, declare their God. You shall have done them all like jewels. Deck yourself with them like a bride.
Who's the them? Let's go back. Who's the them?
People, no?
Your children. Right? And we talk about Jerusalem in Echa. We talked about Jerusalem as like being like a city, like a mother, a widow whose children have left her. right? And so the prophet is saying, it's all coming back. Your children are coming. And who has not seen one of those necklaces or bracelets where you put the names of your children on the bracelet? Imagine that. You get to essentially wear your children. They will be like jewelry. Go ahead.
As for your ruins and desolate places and your land laid waste, you shall soon be crowded with settlers, while destroyers say, stay far from you.
Okay, so this is the promise. Do we feel comforted a little? Yes, you're right. So now we're beginning to feel a little more comforted. We haven't seen it yet, but it's coming, and we've been promised that these things that were ruined and desolate, there's going to be crops again, there's going to be settlers again, there's going to be inhabitants again, and those who destroyed you will leave or will stay far from you. And look at this. Is this not gorgeous? Od yomeru be'oznayim, be'oznayech, rather. It was speaking to Jerusalem as if she was a woman. B'nei shikulayech, tsar li hamakom, gishali ve'esheva. The children you thought you had lost, they are going to remain in your hearing. You're going to be able to hear them. They're going to play where you can hear them. You know, where are the kids? They're playing. The place is too crowded for me. Make room. So imagine that this place which has been desolate, right? This place which has been ruined by invaders, by marauders, is now going to be so crowded with your children, with your settlers. And, go ahead, whoever's reading. Anybody? Somebody?
And you shall say to yourself, who bore these for me? When I was bereaved and barren, exiled and disdained, by whom then were these reared? I was left all alone. And where have these gone?
Yeah, and so now this is the back and forth, right? You know, God says, I was wronged. You have done harm. You have done evil. You have to understand why you are suffering. And now in this Haftarah, there's this back and forth. Your children will return. Your settlers will return. You're going to get things back. And there's a but this was torn away from me, but what if they don't come back? There's like a back and forth between the prophet and the people, between God and the prophet. It goes back and forth, back and forth. Remember that the functions of a prophet are to stand in the breach between the people and God, to deliver the message to the high and mighty, to let them know where they've gone off, and to prophesize a vision that the people can use. Just as the prophet smacks people down for not obeying the mitzvot, for worshiping, for idol worship, for all these horrible things, the prophet also says, in your darkest time, you have to still stay with the program, because there's redemption coming. There's redemption coming. I don't think we're going to get a chance to finish it, but we can make an honest effort. Okay. Thus said my sovereign God, I will raise my hand to the nations. I will lift up my ensign, like a flag, to the people, and they shall bring your sons in their bosoms and carry your daughters on their backs. Kings shall tend your children, and their queens shall serve as nurses. They shall bow to you, face to the ground, and lick the dust of your feet. Oy, oy, oy. And you shall know that I am God. And those who trust in me shall not be shamed. Can spoil be taken from a warrior, or captives retrieved from a victor? And yet, see, this is the back and forth. Wait a second, they have ruined us. They have taken away our wealth and our riches. They have dragged people off in chains. But remember that this is all us aiming towards Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Yet thus says God, captives shall be taken from a warrior, and your spoil shall be retrieved from a tyrant. Right? This thing that never happens in real life will happen. For I will contend with your adversaries, and I will deliver your children. I will make your oppressors eat their own flesh and be drunk with their own blood as with wine. And all humankind shall know that I, God, am your Savior, the mighty one of Jacob, your Redeemer. What does this one sentence make you think of? If you were listening, made you think of Tisha B'Av, right? Sylvia.
That's just what I was going to say. Lamentations, Tisha B'Av.
Lamentations, yeah. Because there it is. It's described how we did this. And the prophet is saying that God is saying, I have to be careful about who says what here, because we're quoting Isaiah. And Isaiah says that God says, turnabout is fair play.
He's going to get revenge, though. That's really revenge.
It is revenge, isn't it? But think about what happens at various times in the Torah, what Moshe says to God when God is, we have 3 more verses, we've got to do it. But when God says, I'm going to wipe them out and start again with you, what does Moshe say? He says, the people, all the nations of the world will say, look what their God does. He just wipes them all out. You know, he gets peeved, he gets upset, he wipes them all out. And this is God saying that I will stop. God doesn't say, I'm going to wipe them out. God says, they'll be punished for what they did to you. And since we're reading this Haftarah in the context of Tisha B'Av, the run up to Tisha B'Av and the running away from Tisha B'Av, then we have to understand why these Haftarot were chosen. And remember also that these 10 Haftarot are the only ones in the whole of the liturgical year that are not chosen to fit the Torah portion. It'd be an interesting exercise to see if we could go find sections from the different prophets for these 7 parshiot. Because they don't have their own Haftarah in the way that we understand it, where the Haftarah is talking back and forth to the Torah portion. I want to just zippity finish this because it's got a gorgeous ending. Okay, so now, here we go. We have 3 verses. Remember I said that when you say, Ko Amar Adonai, thus says Adonai, this is what we say when there is a new piece of information, a new theme. Where is there a bill of divorce of your mother whom I dismissed? In other words, God says, I didn't divorce the people Israel. I did not divorce Israel. And which of my creditors was it to whom I sold you off? Hey, wait a second. You were only sold off for your sins, and your mother dismissed for your crimes. Right? So the people are just paying their bills. God takes them back after they have paid it up. Why, when I came, was no one there? Why, when I called, would none respond? Is my arm then too short to rescue? Have I not the power to save? And remember, with a mere rebuke, I dry up the sea, I turn the rivers into desert, and their fish stink from lack of water. They die of thirst. Right? This is God saying, what makes you think that I do not have the power to come back and bring you back? And here's the kicker. I clothe the skies in blackness and make their raiment sackcloth. And that's the end of our Haftarah. And we should look at this this word kisutam, like their raiment, kisutam, asim kisutam, is a word that's used when we put on the meditation before putting on a talit. So the sky stretches out like a talit. I mean, it's gorgeous. And we're only getting started, right? These are just the Haftarot that we read last week and the one that we're reading this week. And they come really close to bringing home the message of comfort. And it's going to get closer and closer. Each of the Haftarot that we read between now and Rosh Hashanah is going to emphasize the message of redemption and comfort. The other thing that I want to mention before I forget is that if you look at the arc of the 10 Haftarot, right? God complains to the people, here's what you have done. And here's why you are suffering, because you have abandoned me, you have worshipped idols, you have perverted the sacrifices, you have mistreated the widow, the orphan, the stranger, right? And this is the prophet now saying, okay, it has been a rough road, but there is comfort coming, right? There's comfort because God has told me to deliver to you a message of comfort. And how is that comfort going to come? Your children are going to come back to you. The inhabitants of Zion are going to come back. Remember, before there was ever a term called Zionism, this is like Zionism. It says, your children will return. Your nation will build up again. And how is that going to happen? It's going to happen because God has Yad Chazakav Uzroa Netuyah, a strong arm and a strong hand and an outstretched arm. God says, whoa, you're worried because you had captives taken away. You think I can't bring them back? That's my thing. I'm God. Right? And the end of these 7 Haftarot of consolation, it's going to end in Rosh Hashanah. And what happens on Rosh Hashanah?
World was born.
The world was born, right? The universe was created. Rosh Hashanah, the world was born. And what happens on Yom Kippur? We say, okay, all of our misdeeds have been written in this book, right? We say it in the Unatana Tokef, which is a piyut. All of our misdeeds were written, and we are counted and measured like sheep. And yet, there is return. Tshuva, tzedakah, utfila. Right? With these three, like a 3-legged stool, there is a way to come back. And we have been told that God takes us back. So now we're at that moment. We have gone through the pain of Tisha B'Av. If we were paying attention, we understand what we did wrong. And little by little by little, God takes us back in love. And then we stand kind of at a reckoning at Rosh Hashanah and at Yom Kippur. We stand at a reckoning to say, okay, we heard you. Now you have comforted us. You've heard us. You've heard our prophet saying, Nachamu, Nachamu, right? We come to you with a heart that understands where we went wrong and where we want to do better. Anybody have anything they want to say? I'd pay Nachamu again. We good?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Please.
The prophet's job, I wanted to write that down and you spoke so fast I missed it. If you could please repeat that.
This is according to Yochanan Mufs, who talked about the job of the prophet. Job number 1 is to speak truth to power. Job number 2 is to plead on behalf of God to the people and plead on behalf of the people to God, okay? To stand in the breach between God and the people. And job number 3 is to deliver a vision of what could be of the future. All right?
Thank you.
Say, if you go in this direction, here's your future. If you go in this direction, here's your future, to deliver a vision of the future. And those are the,
Thank
and now, if anybody joins us for the ALI class, we're going to be looking at the prophecies of the minor poets as well, prophets as well. And in those cases, we have like a really, like a different kind of language, and it's going to be fun to do. So even though some of it will rehash this material, I think that there'll be enough new stuff to make everybody happy. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
Yes.
Yes, Susan.
I don't want to go into this, but I want to point out the way we do Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is a personal examination and a personal thing. The structure of this is a national examination and a national thing, but I don't want to discuss the evolution of Judaism right now.
No, but it's a great point, because the prophet is speaking not to an individual, but to everyone. And so this idea of these Haftarot, the prophecies, that they go out, in a kind of megaphone fashion.
Yeah.
They're not in that kind of intimate, personal thing. And that is perhaps the genius of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is that you get to sit with your own thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. All right, everybody. I'll see you all next week. Thank you very much. I'll send out I'll send out this, and I'll send out a link to Nachamu.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.